But right now, Tony Orlando, tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree. Tony, are you with us?
I'm with you, Michelle. How are you doing?
I'm so great, Mr. Tony Orlando. I am so excited to meet you on the phone. And
thank you.
My goodness, you are just the man. You have a big show coming up at the Borgata tomorrow night.
I do.
And are you excited about it?
Well, I love working in Atlantic City, and I love working in the Borgata. It's like coming home to me. Being raised in New York City and coming to the shore as a kid, and all these years working in Atlantic City, it's always good to come home.
Well, I'm sure that everybody here says that they love having you come home too, because you've made a number of stops in Atlantic City. And what I was telling our listeners earlier, I not only know you from the music side, but I love how you really give back, and you love doing it, and you have done so in some big ways in our area. Specifically, I remember with my years working at the television station here, we'd done numerous stories when you would come to visit, and one of them in particular, I still remember the footage when you would help out at Sister Jean's Kitchen and would help feed some of the homeless there. And it was so sweet, and you would encourage them and sing songs, and I just loved that. What kind of experience was that for you?
Well, she was an extraordinary woman.
Yes, she was.
She had a saintly way about her. She was like a Mother Teresa. She really was special. Mm-hmm. And everybody, as you know, in that city adored and loved her. And when I went there, I went with my band, with Kerry Cole and Tracy Cole, and we went and sang Christmas carols, and we sang. One year we were there for the Christmas period, and another time we just came and sat and did doo-wop songs, and we had a great time. And I put my apron on. I remember having the joy of being able to see somebody pick up a bowl of soup and a salad and something really solid to eat. It was a joy to be a part of that. I mean, and she was loved in the town, as you know, and she's very sorely missed. When she passed away, I don't know, there was like a chunk that came out of Atlantic City. That lady was very special.
I agree. And I had the privilege of, interviewing her several times with different stories. And it was the day that we found out that she had passed that I was in charge of basically writing the obit piece, the story that we ran that night. And I'll tell you what, Tony, it was a tough one, and such a responsibility that you feel knowing, as you were just telling our listeners, how beloved she was. I mean, she really was just so iconic with the city, and just a tremendous amount of responsibility that I felt to make sure that I could do the best story I could to remember a woman who gave back to so many people. Just a beautiful, beautiful soul. But I love the fact that you have such a big heart, and not only have you, helped out there at Sister Jean's Kitchen, you're involved in so many other different charity events and organizations. You do a lot of veterans visits. And, of course, with your big hit, Tie a Yellow Ribbon, we all think of it becoming that American homecoming song, that it turned into this hopeful anthem of having people return home. What was it like for you to see your song that was, already so big turn into something like that and take that little bit of a path?
Well, the guys that wrote that song are from New Jersey, Irwin Levine and Larry Brown. When they wrote that song, I don't think they had any idea, like I didn't, that song would become such an anthem of freedom and homecoming and part of the fabric of America, really. I mean, if I told you how many times I stood on a tarmac with parents waiting for their loved ones to come home from Iraq and Afghanistan, Vietnam, Desert Storm, over these 40 years, it staggers me to think that song became a conduit, a gluing to keep a hope alive for very many of them. And some of them held, like the prisoners of war in Vietnam, there were over 500 came home to tie yellow ribbons. They were the first ones to come home to yellow ribbons on their doors. And the first time I ever sang that song was to welcome them home at the Cotton Bowl with Bob Hope. My gosh. And when I think back to what a journey a song has been for me, for the military, for the parents of those who serve, to it goes beyond. It goes beyond. It's almost like, could one song really have done that much good? And I say that because I didn't write it. I'm just an admirer of I was just a mailman that delivered the letter. The guys that wrote it, they deserve the credit because they wrote something very special there that really was never intended to be for the military, but it turned out that way.
Right.
And it's also, as you know, used as a homecoming for people who are held captive or who have been kidnapped, not just servicemen and women, but average everyday people. There have been large stories of people who were held, kidnapped, and yellow ribbons tied on trees welcoming them home. So it's been a great journey and a proudful one. And when I sing that song, I really mean this. I have a sense of responsibility because now that song has hit a certain kind of level that it's beyond a hit record, it's beyond a performer like myself, it's beyond anything. It's got its own iconic state of mind, and I feel responsible when I sing it because somebody out there has a relative who served in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
They came home with yellow ribbons or Desert Storm or Iraq or Afghanistan. So it's a proudful thing that I was blessed to be the one to record that first.
Well, I think you're being very humble. Obviously, you're saying that you didn't write the song, but, with your star power and taking that to make it such a big hit, I mean, it became, I think, such a big anthem because, you were the one behind that and you were able to push that out there, and the people that had already gotten to know you and were already a fan of your music.
Thank you for saying that, Michelle. I'll tell you what really, the joy of it all is it has been the spark plug to raise hundreds of millions of dollars for veterans.
Love it. Love it.
Really,
that's awesome.
Really, really, it has become a shining light. I'll give you an example. We'll be doing. We've done shows with the Borgata, and for our military, as you know, during the air shows, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And this weekend on Saturday night, I haven't told anybody this. You'll be the first one to know. I'm presenting an award that I've given to over 20 years working for Veterans Days. I've given it to former presidents, John McCain, Gerald Ford, Eisenhower's. They've all showed up. Ross Perot, Oliver North, Ollie North. It goes on and on and on. The people who received this award, it really has been a privilege to be able to give it to them for people who care about the military and do something very strongly for the military. Well, I know that I've known a guy for over 40 years, almost coming up on 50 years, and his name is Geraldo Rivera. And Geraldo, I don't know if you know this, but he has gone through every single war. And if you watch him report the news, he when he's on the front lines, he's literally on the front line. Yeah. I mean, he's right in the middle of fire. So I'm giving that award to him Saturday night at the Borgata. He's coming in with his wife, Erica.
Oh,
and I'll be proud to give it to him because he's
wonderful.
been a long-time friend and a great supporter of our veterans and even, silently and quietly, he does more for our veterans than people even know. So I want to be able to acknowledge that on your show, that I'm going to be doing that for him on Saturday night. But, it's like when I was in Iraq and I would meet these young, 19-year-old, 20-year-old soldiers sitting out there, and I'm just singing the Yellow Ribbon. I could see one kid, I could read his lips, and I heard, is that Geraldo Rivera? He had no idea who I was. He was just too young, and it wasn't part of his music. But then he came up to me afterwards and said, "Tony, you're the guy that recorded that song that my father has a yellow ribbon on the back of his SUV that says support our troops. He sends me pictures. That's what started it?"
Wow.
I said, "Yes, sir, it did." And it's just been a great, Atlantic City, people ask me all the time, where do you love to work? We're the greatest audience. The greatest audience is already here in the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
When you come to work in Atlantic City and you get on that stage, the audience loves you. It gives you the heart because people on the East Coast, they don't know any other way. people who raised in this area, Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York, Brooklyn, the whole Connecticut, the whole area, there's something very special in terms of, I don't know if it's the slush in the winter or the blizzards that make people come out this summer and the spring, and they say, we're coming out to party. It's the best place to work.
That's awesome.
I'm grateful to Joe Lupo and everybody at the Borgata for allowing me to continue to come home twice a year, every year, to a city I've been working since the Steel Pier when I was 16 years old.
Well, I want to talk more about that if you'll stick with us after the break. I'm just so excited for you to share such a big piece of information, especially with that award, but so much more, so many more questions I'd like to ask in our next segment if you would stick with us while we take a quick commercial break. Thank you so much, Tony Orlando, the one and only, sticking with us. We'll be right back after this. We're back with Middays with Michelle Dawn Mooney, and so happy to have Mr. Tony Orlando with us. Thanks for sticking with us, Tony. Loved hearing what you had to tell us about, of course, Tie a Yellow Ribbon and how it really has become such an anthem for so many that had soldiers serving in several wars now, and that hopeful song and hopeful anthem. And you were just telling us a little bit about your experience with that, and a big award you're going to be presenting to Geraldo Rivera, which was first announced on our show, which is so exciting. You will be at the Borgata tomorrow night, the Music Box at the Borgata. And for those of you who do not know...
He'll be there Saturday night, but he'll be with us Saturday night.
He'll be Saturday. He will not be there Friday, but you have a show on Friday.
And I have a show on Saturday night, too.
Okay.
A private show.
A private show. Yeah. Am I invited, Tony? No.
Sure.
Okay, so...
Borgata has a show for their loyal... people who, attend the hotel.
That's awesome.
A special show for them, and that's the show that we're doing.
That's awesome.
But you know something, Michelle? I want you to tell you something. I'm working Atlantic City since 1961.
Yeah, wow.
And I can tell you something, and I want you to hear this. I'm too old to just throw compliments at you, but you have developed quite a reputation in town.
Aww.
And you should be very proud of yourself because, people come and go in this town. I have a good friend, David Spatz. I'm sure you know David.
Yes, I do very well.
Who I've known, and he's like a brother to me. But he and everybody in this town that I've ever mentioned your name to, they all have the greatest things to say about you.
That's so sweet. You made my day. I'm almost speechless.
They really do. And and people have come and gone in this town, as you know. And so you must be doing something that's touching people's hearts as well as doing a very professional job as an interviewer, and a radio personality. But you really have done something for the city. So continue on because Atlantic City needs us. And it needs us to hype it and complete the journey that it started on way back when it was the beach town in the 20s, whatever. And I'm telling you that there's no greater. Think about it. What other casino town in the world has an ocean like this?
You're absolutely
right.
What
other place? Yeah. So I love this town. I love this city, and so thank you for supporting it and propping it up where it belongs because it got some press that I don't think was fair.
Yep.
And I don't think was right. Mm-hmm. And I think people jumped on an idea of it having a problem. Let me tell you something. Vegas and every town that's ever had its day, there's no such thing as a straight line that goes upward. Fame and success is more like a roller coaster ride, up and then down, and then up and then down. I saw it happen in Vegas, and the little bit of downtime that this town has had is temporary, and we're on our way back, Atlantic City.
That's right.
Don't ever forget it.
I love your sentiment. First of all, thank you so much for those very kind words. You have no idea how that
I'm not just throwing a compliment at you. I'm telling you, every time I've told people I'm going to talk to you today, your mother should have only heard the response.
She probably paid all those people to say those things anyway, but we won't even go there. No, you have no idea what that means to me, Tony. And the fact of the matter is, thank you. I was born in Atlantic City Hospital, so I am local as it comes, and have been here my whole life. And that's the thing. It's such a joy to be here and know the positive positive things that are going on that so many others don't. So I consider that a tremendous compliment that you think that I'm able to do that a little bit. So I want to get more.
Well, I was amazed, to be honest. So I want the listeners to hear this. You know, you say, I go, yeah, what show are you doing? I tell them I'm doing your show. They go, oh, I love her. Oh.
See, that was my
I
mother.
love her.
She definitely
That's
paid
what I
somebody
get.
there.
That's what I get. Really.
Tony, you're
hear that.
awesome.
Really.
You're like my new best friend. I just love you.
I've been around too long to lie.
I want to tell people, though,
I'm not promoting records, and I'm not promoting a new movie or nothing, so I just want you to know.
You're so kind.
That's the truth. You should enjoy that.
Oh,
you know?
you're a delight. You really, I love you. I want to tell people more about you, though. I mean, that's the whole reason. You know, we could, you know, my mom would love for you to go on for another hour, but we just can't have that. Tony, you have done so much in your career. At the age of 16, you hit the national charts. I mean, 16 years old, you were on there. Talk about hits. You won 3 American Music Awards. You have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. I mean, you are the real deal. You've played to 5 presidents. Now, I have to tell you, and I hope you don't mind that I'm doing this. 6. Oh, I'm sorry. 6. See? Updated information. I'm glad you corrected that. 6 presidents. And I have to tell you, I was very intrigued when I read this piece of information. It may or may not be true. I will ask you if it is. But you know that show Scandal that everybody watches, and it's like a huge show. So that's on tonight. And it talks about the president in the White House. Well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Tony Orlando, you were involved in this little juicy delight of a story that I would like to, you can say yay or nay or no comment. But apparently, in the 1976 Republican National Convention, which was in Missouri, you were the little dancer dancing to the tune of the favorite Tie a Yellow Ribbon with then First Lady Betty Ford. Now, this is the kicker. To divert media attention as Nancy Davis Reagan entered the room at Kemper Arena. Now, Ronald Reagan, as people know, did not win against Gerald Ford for the nomination that year, but of course came back in 1980 to become president. Now, this gentleman who, this is all stuff that I've read, Ray Barnhart, who is a Reagan co-manager from Texas, he criticized Mrs. Ford for having, quote unquote, danced a jig with you, Mr. Tony Orlando, and Barbara Staff, another Texas co-chairman, called Betty Ford's behavior a low, cheap shot. It was later confirmed that a Ford campaign slipped the song to the band when Nancy Reagan entered. This is something that I read online. But first of all, I have to tell you,
I believe what you read online, because it's a cheap shot to talk about a cheap shot. We were friends,
right? But I have to say, Tony,
were enjoying. No. Let me finish. We were enjoying the fact that her husband was about to receive the nomination of President of the United States. Her favorite song was Yellow Ribbon. Mrs. Reagan's favorite song was Yellow Ribbon. When Mrs. Reagan walked into the arena at Kansas City, you gotta imagine it's the size of Madison Square Garden.
I'm sure, yeah.
Well, when they asked Mrs. Reagan what's her favorite song, she said Yellow Ribbon. Well, Mrs. Ford didn't know that was her favorite song, and when they played it, she just automatically turned to me and said, "You want to dance?" And we were in the presidential box, and we danced. It was that innocent and that simple. If you read both Mrs. Ford's book and Mrs. Reagan's book, there was really nothing negative about it.
Right. I just want you to know.
And then the next day they had it in the New York Times, Battle of the Wives. And
right.
It was silly.
Well, it
was so silly because it was such an innocent little nothing.
Right. And that's why I think, and I mean no disrespect bringing that up, but I found it humorous in the fact that people can make, as you said, such a big thing out of nothing. And of course, I mean, to even call this a scandal in today's day and age, you and I know a scandal has some crazy stuff going on, but this was actually considered just a dance that you had with a song that was enjoyed by 2, very well-respected ladies. I found it interesting and humorous that people just write about the craziest things.
It was upstaging Mrs. Reagan's entrance, but I can tell you now that it wasn't planned.
Right, exactly. And I'm sure you had a ball, and I'm sure everybody had a ball when that song started playing.
We were very good friends. I became very close to the Fords.
Okay.
And that particular day, in that same box right behind me, was Cary Grant and Sonny Bono.
Wow.
Who were also friends of those Fords. And he was one of the most decent human beings I've ever known in my life. I mean, the reason they picked him to be vice president, because, he wasn't voted vice president. They picked him after the Nixon scandal,
right?
Watergate, to replace Nixon when Nixon was impeached.
Tony, I have to cut you off just a moment. We just have to take a commercial break. We will be right back with more from the fabulous Tony Orlando. Stay with us.
Go get the money.
We'll be right back. We're back with Middays with Michelle Dawn Mooney, and love that we're talking to Mr. Tony Orlando and listening to one of his many hits and what he's known for, not only with the music side, but just really has given back so much. And we're just having a little fun. I do want to let you finish that because I brought up this story that I found online that talked about this big scandal surrounding Ty Yellow Ribbon, and he was asked to dance with Mrs. Ford, and that took away from Nancy Reagan, and it was so and it's so, first of all, tame compared to any type of scandal that we've seen in present day, and it wasn't even a scandal. And
we should have those scandals today,
right? Seriously, but yeah, it's much tamer. I grant you. I've not seen an episode of that show Scandal, but I'm sure this is
something. Miss, you want to hear something interesting about that whole thing? When Reagan, as you know, he lost the nomination and Ford won. Then he lost the election to Jimmy Carter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then when Reagan ran, who do you think he offered the vice presidency to?
Who?
Gerald Ford.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah. So his first person on his list was Gerald Ford.
Wow.
And he asked Gerald Ford if he would, want to be vice president again. That's the kind of respect they had for each other.
Right.
So there was no scandal.
Right.
And it was just one kind of like unfortunate coincidence that she was walking in while Nancy turned to me and she said, "Hey, they're playing your song. When do we get up and dance?" I don't know if people realize this is so far back, but Betty Ford, before she became First Lady, in her early youth, was a dancer.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Yeah. In fact, when they announced that it was over, and he was no longer president, and Jimmy Carter was coming in, they had a news conference, and I'm watching the television at home. And when the conference was over, and Betty did the conference because President Ford had laryngitis, so she did all the speaking.
Okay.
So when she leaves the camera, imagine when she leaves the screen, I'm not kidding you, Michelle, as she leaves my screen, my phone rings, and it's Betty Ford, literally. And she goes, "Tony?" I said, "Yes, Mrs. Ford." She goes, "I'm out of work. Do you need a hoofer?"
Oh, that's hilarious.
So she was always a dancer.
Wow.
So it was only her instincts when that song came on to be generous and kind to me, because she realized that my family was watching me dance with the First Lady of the land at a convention for the presidential convention, and there I am dancing with her. And she knew that this would make my family very proud. That's why she did it.
That's a great, great story. I mean, I can't even imagine singing for 6 presidents and dancing with first ladies. And
yeah, exactly.
You want to talk about powerful? We talked about why with the veterans aspect that had such star power, that song. But that song, that gets you in a lot of crazy places, huh?
It does, And then, born in New York City, never saw high school. I'm an 8th grader. That's as far as I went. And to be able to look back on this blessed life that I've had, to be able to meet my heroes, to meet my favorite baseball players or my favorite singers, and work with, I remember Jerry Lewis and I working together after Sammy Davis had passed away, and Jerry asked me to finish the tour with him, and he said to me backstage, "Tony, you want to know something? This is really crazy." I said, "What's that, Jerry?" He said, "Well, do you realize that I've only worked with 3 partners?" I said, "Dean, that's right. Sammy, that's right. And you Puerto Rican. So the only 3 partners I ever had. That's pretty good company, he says to me.
Wow.
And here I was hearing this from one of my idols.
Yeah.
As a kid growing up, I idolized Jerry. And to think that he was saying that I partnered with him, and there was only three, Dean, Sammy, and myself. Let me tell you something. You talk about being given an award, and you talk about moments. There's a moment, or with Mrs. Ford, or working with Sinatra, in Vegas, and singing with him.
That's crazy.
And hanging with those guys. And at the same time, being able to have my first guest on my TV show was Jackie Gleason.
Oh.
And then to have the opportunity to work with the great Benny King or Jackie Wilson. So I've had this incredible ride, Michelle, that's been unbelievable because I'm a fan first. I'm the first one to pull out my autograph book and say, hey, would you sign my autograph?
That's
would you
awesome.
sign an autograph to me? I admire talent, and I admire these people, not in a starstruck way, but I admire people who have been able to have longevity and stay in this business, which is, very disposable, and the forget factor in show business, as you know, is easy. Mm-hmm. And to see guys like George Burns and know that they were in this business and stayed in it until they were 100 years old, or be introduced to the veterans and the POWs by Bob Hope. What an incredible life God has blessed me with, really.
That's awesome, Tony.
And the public, because without them, without those two entities, without the good Lord and the good people that put you there, you don't make it in this business.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I have to give, you are so humble in what you have accomplished. The fact that you're saying, you're the fan first and you're the one who's asking for other people's autographs. I think that's why you do have such a connection as well, because, you are the superstar and you have, the music and you have, the variety show, and there's so many aspects of your life, as you said. How did I even come to find myself in these situations? But you're so real and genuine, and never forget where you came from. You're saying right now, New York City, an East Coast boy, and the fact that you didn't have the higher education and that you were able to do all these things, and you want to give back because you're so thankful and you're appreciative of what you have had happen in your life. And you know what? You don't get that with a lot of people who have developed the star power that you have. So, that's kudos to you. And I know you can say, oh, well, it's others and others. And of course, it's the benevolence of fans sometimes and being open to, keep artists or musicians or any type of entertainer around. But that really says so much about who you are as a person, because if you didn't have the heart and the passion for people that you do, I don't know. It might be different, but my goodness, you're friends with, all these different people on both sides of the aisle with politics and with entertainment. And, I just think it's such a joy to hear you talk about so many of these stories and how every person that you're talking about, whether it's the biggest celebrity or people that you just met, you have that same open heart to just wanting to meet them because they're just a great human being. And I think that's just a great gift.
Michelle, the truth of the matter is, and I mean this, I know it's going to sound like nonsense, but after 54 years, there's no reason for me to lie. Mm-hmm. The true stars are the people, the audiences that continue to support you.
Yeah.
They are the ones. They're my bosses. They're the ones that have given me this life. They're the ones that have supported my shows and bought my records and have allowed me to realize the dream I had since I'm a 9-year-old kid. I've always wanted to be in the show business. And then when I walk on a stage, Michelle, I'll be honest with you, I'm so thankful to those people out there that when I see a performer or a young performer refusing to sign autographs, I get outraged. Mm-hmm. It makes me angry, because those are the people that you pay attention to. Those are the people who cared about you enough to put you where you are and continue to support your family. And they don't get – it's not about stardom. It's about peopledom.
Yeah.
Stardom is a mirage. There was a book called Notes to Myself I used to read as a kid, and it reads like this. It says, fame isn't really fame at all. It only appears that way from a distance. And that's the truth.
That's a great way to look at it. I mean,
Hang on 1 second. Hang on 1 second.
You have such an amazing view of your life and what you've accomplished, and I think it even just cements the fact of why you're so big and why you are the star that you are, because you just love people. I love that phrase, peopledom. You know, it's not, you know, the stardom, it's peopledom. It's remembering where you came, who you are, and the people who got you there. And I have to tell you, there have been at least one or two times that I have met people that I really kind of put on the pedestal, and I was a little disappointed. And I was a little disappointed, you know, and it was a shame because...
Doesn't that drive you crazy?
Well,
Doesn't that just get you crazy?
This is why, Tony, for me personally, I have issues with if you have somebody who they make it to a certain level and they've really created this fan base and they don't use it to be able to give back to the people that helped get them there. That's right. What bothers me. And
me too.
That's just kind of, that's all I'll say about that. But it's just disheartening.
It happens too often.
Mm-hmm.
And the old school guys, the guys I mentioned, they were never like that. You know, I remember when Frank Sinatra's mother died in a plane crash in Palm Springs. I happened to be with them at the Caesars Palace. Mm. And I said, Frank, forgive me for being so bold. But now remember something. At the time, the Tony Orlando and Dawn show was number one. We had the number one record in the country, so we were hot. So I felt like I could say this to him without looking egotistical. I said, Frank, look, I know this is a time you probably want to go down to Palm Springs. If you want, I'll go on tonight. I have the band. We're right here. We'll go right on. He said, Tony, those people out there came to see Frank Sinatra, and they're going to see Frank Sinatra.
Wow.
And I watched this man walk out on stage. The audience had not even an inkling of an idea that his mother just crashed into a mountain in Palm Springs. Mm. And he didn't know whether she survived it or not. And he went out there, and he gave a show that I'll never forget. And I thought, he put that audience before anything. He said, no, my mother wouldn't want it any other way, and that's my obligation, is to go out and entertain those people. They paid to get in, they're going to see Sinatra. And then finally when the show was over, I saw him run out of that building, get into the car, go to the airport, in tears, knowing that his mother may have not been found alive, and she wasn't. Wow. And then years later, I brought it up to him. And I said, you know, Frank, that was an amazing moment. He said, no, Tony, that's what we do. Mm. That's what we do. We owe it to those people who make us who we are to be there for them.
Yeah. That's tremendous.
Yeah, and that's a true story. I mean, really, that's a side of Frank you don't often hear, but I was privy to that. I was right there when it happened.
Well, I know, Tony, you have an autobiography that it was 2002, Halfway to Paradise, that came out. I was going to say you could write 20 books, I'm sure, because all of your stories, I could just sit here. I'm like, can you please come on our show every day and just talk for 2 hours, because I could listen to you forever.
So
Tony,
you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, such a pleasure.
I want to wish you the very best on your show Saturday night.
Thank you so much.
You're going to be at the Taj Mahal, I know, and I'll be at the Borgata. And what do? We owe it to our audience, right?
That's right. That's right. You are just...
you go knock 'em dead, girl.
You're fabulous, Tony Orlando. Thank you so much once again. He will be at the Borgata for a public show at the Music Box on Friday night, a private show on Saturday.
Please be there, everybody. Love to see you
Everybody. We're listening to another one of your hits, Knock 3 Times right now. Such a joy. I can't thank you enough for coming on. Please come back when you're here. Would love to have you back.
I'll be there. Call me at home even. God bless you.
Love you. All right. Thank you, Tony Orlando. We will be right back with Middays with Michelle Dawn Mooney. Stay tuned.